T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy and with me is Tom Chaparria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm great. At Globo Gym, the Texans are better than you, and we know it.
Yeah, love the dodgeball shout out. If you can score 7 points, you can win a game. Let's launch into that first. So, like, is that not the most obvious thing that D'Amico has said, like indicating how he views the team? Because I felt pretty much all season that D'Amico has believed that, but when asked about it by Aaron Wilson this past week, he literally said, "Yeah, if the offense puts 7 points on the board, like our mentality is that we can win the game." Like, how do you feel about that statement finally just being outright said?
I think if you've been watching the Texans long enough, you've kind of seen it. I think this past game, it's great that you brought it up because this past game, you saw a team that came out, looked very aggressive early on, shaky in the middle parts, and then got conservative so as not to put their defense in a position where they couldn't be successful. And I think that speaks exactly to what you just said, to what D'Amico said, to why the Texans kind of play football the way they do, where sometimes we question, why aren't they pushing the ball? Why aren't they pushing for more points? Why do they get this way at the end of halves? Why do they get this way in the third quarters? Where it's just kind of like, okay, our defense has got this now. You did what you need to do. Now we're just going to lean on the defense heavy. And if it works, it works. The fear is that you can't, it's a switch you just can't turn on sometimes, and that you should be trying to take advantage of situations with this team to not only help the offense like gain momentum and gain, confidence in what they're doing, but to take some of the load off the defense who they've leaned on heavy.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big things that's changed throughout the season, like it's always been the mentality is put 7 points up, we'll win the game. The problem has been that the offense has been so lackluster early in the season, and one of the reasons I think a lot of people don't agree with the thought that this Texans offense has improved is because the way they've improved is mostly in ways that help the defense. It's not like they've suddenly started putting up 30 points a game. Like they're just playing really good possession football. I would equate it to the first year that I really got into the Dynamo. Like that was their MO, was like, we're just going to have the ball the whole game. And eventually we will have a goal and the other team won't, and we will win that game. And that's kind of what the Texans are doing is they're playing, the Chargers game is a prime example. 2 really good plays, just, 5 minutes of really great offensive football. And then, hey, try to not go 3 and out and give the defense a break so they can come back in. And so early in the season, what's happening is the defense D'Amico is turning to his defense, and his defense is gassed. They're winded. And we've talked about the concept a lot, the atrophy of a defense. Like that was hitting really hard early on. So D'Amico would play his game of, okay, I would rather punt the ball here or take the field goal, play it conservatively, and let the defense take care of it. And then the defense would get run off the field And obviously there was a couple instances like Dario Gambale fumble, Nico had a fumble. There was some clear offensive faults that put the defense in those situations early on as well. But as the season has developed, I think the fact that the offense has done better at possessing the football is really what it is. Like, not turning the ball over immediately, not going 3 and out a lot is really the big thing they've done that's helped out the defense. So when we get to those points in the game, D'Amico can say, yeah, we'll take 3 points. We don't need to go for it on 4th and 1 in the red zone anymore, because if Fairbairn puts 3 up, like, we are now up by a touchdown, and I trust that the defense can stop the other team from scoring a touchdown. So it's literally 7 points, and that's why he didn't say 3 points. I mean, to put the pressure on your defense to stop an offense from getting into field goal range is different than putting the pressure on your defense to literally have the whole field. You can let them get 99 yards, just don't let them get into the end zone. So I think it's very indicative of how they've played this season. And I think that when you look at that concept, it really is what you have to look at when you're looking for improvement offensively, is the fact that the offense has been able to possess the ball more. So, I mean, let's look directly at the Chargers-Texans game. So obviously, CJ Stroud threw like a nuclear airstrike to Jaden Higgins to start the game, comes back, solid drive, hits Jaden Higgins, 2 40-plus yard receptions for 2 different rookie receivers, first time that's ever happened in NFL history. The big question for me, and I think for everyone, is what do you think changed after the first 5 minutes of the game? Because the Texans offense was rolling, and then it kind of felt like I said, I mean, it wasn't like they just stopped moving the ball. They didn't go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Like, they did enough to give the defense enough rest that the defense was able to hold. But what do you think changed in that time? Did the Chargers just suddenly figure them out and there was nothing going? Were we not making those adjustments that Nick Caley constantly talks about making?
So to get into that, I think you have to look at the turnover by CJ Stroud. I think that really kind of changed the momentum for me. It's weird too, because you want CJ to make these throws, and you want your quarterback to play a style of football that's saying, okay, I'm not afraid to take shots. I'm not afraid to be aggressive, and with that will come turnovers. It's just how it goes. Sometimes you're going to throw into coverages where only you can fit them in, and CJ's done it at times where he's made plays where you look at it and go, man, that's 1 of 1, or 1 of 5, or however many you feel like could actually do what he just did. And I think you started looking at the team, they raced out to that lead, and then the turnover happens, and then you're saying, okay, now you're seeing more. Let's just pound the rock more. You're seeing more around the line of scrimmage, not push the ball downfield, that sort of thing. And the only way I can look at it is that way. Had CJ not turned the ball over, we might be talking about this score being a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And there's a fine line between shutting it down entirely. And like we said, we talked about it at the beginning of the episode, like, D'Amico has taken a step back from play calling duties on defense. He's more involved in that. And based on the way he's talked about it, I wouldn't be surprised if he may be the one in Nick Caley's ear that's like, okay, that's enough of that. Like, we have to literally not turn the ball over again the rest of the game. So whatever you have to do to prevent turnovers from happening, let's switch the playbook up and call it that way, so that we don't put the defense in a compromising position. So, and to be fair, I mean, while it works, that you look at ahead at the playoffs, I look at it and I compare it to like the Rockets last year going in the playoffs, where really what they were missing was like a steady presence to close out a game. And so when you look at the Texans this year, if your strategy is, okay, we don't have a steady presence to close out the game, as soon as our offense makes a mistake, just pull back and let the defense close it. There are steady presences. As much as I've talked about the AFC playoff picture being wide open, I mean, there are not very many quarterbacks in that picture that I wouldn't trust to take advantage of a team that's playing too conservatively on offense, giving them that, window to take advantage of a defense that maybe is playing more than it should. So at the end of the day, I see why it's happening that way. I can see why there was that step off. It's not just like CJ threw a pick and all of a sudden he sucks at football. As has been the case all season, a lot of people will put it on CJ and he has some, hand in the causation of it. But at the end of the day, CJ making a mistake is not reason for the offense to shut down as a whole, which is what happened. I mean, the play calling and everything changed up as like they were letting it fly. They were putting everything out there for 5 minutes straight. And then all of a sudden it was like, how can we literally avoid doing anything risky at all, ever? And I mean, to be fair, they still managed, like I said, they still managed to move the ball a little bit. They held some possessions, but there was not really a lot of legitimate threats. They got into field goal range a couple of times, and that's really it. Like, you can't see that in the playoffs, I think. And I would hope we saw these adjustments before. Let's look back to CJ Stroud's rookie season, D'Amico Ryan's first season as head coach. What was our talking point? It was, why is Derek Stingley not shadowing the other team's best receiver? And D'Amico said, hey, we play our game of football and they play theirs, and that's what we're going to do. And against the Browns, they did that, and Amari Cooper lit up the Texans for God knows how many yards. I don't even remember. I try to forget that game happened. And Derek Stingley is just on his side of the field, and the Browns, it would have appeared, basically just avoided putting Amari Cooper on that side of the field. Look at the playoffs. The Texans play the Browns in the playoffs, and what does D'Amico Ryans do? He shadows Amari Cooper with Derek Stingley, shuts him down. The offense goes off. The defense locks down the Browns, and in typical fashion, I mean, since D'Amico has been head coach both times we've been to the playoffs, that first round of football is locked down, like taking a bludgeoning hammer to the other team and just crushing them, like, in every way possible. So I think that one thing we can take away, or we can hope, is that D'Amico is in regular season mode. He said, we're going to rely on our defense, and that's what we're going to do. And when it comes down to it in the playoffs, he's going to understand that maybe it's time to take a little more risk, not shut down the offense as soon as things get slightly adverse, and not take your foot off the gas. I don't know. You don't seem to agree with this, but I think this could be that kind of thing where that's the adjustment he makes. But what are your thoughts?
I think he's told us. I think he's been very honest, like how they want to play football, how they want to win. The air it out, greatest show on turf that the league is kind of gravitating towards, where you have teams that are just chucking the ball all over the yard. It's not how D'Amico wants to play football. Now, will he do it in spurts? Absolutely. But I think overall, you watch them and you see them want to control clock. You see them want to sit there and dominate the line of scrimmage, even though that's hit or miss. You see them try to just basically score 21 points and go, okay, that's it. We're done here. They're not trying to make it into a boat race, and it's never gonna. I don't think it's ever gonna be that way unless they get down and have to. I think obviously that changes the dynamic, and they then turn on. Okay, we just got to go. But to start a game, to finish a game, I think what they want to do is run the football. They've said it all season long and rely on this defense. So where we get frustrated, where you see them put up 30 points easy one day, and then you see them struggle to give you 20 points the next, and you're like, why is it so helter-skelter? It's because if it's up to D'Amico, if it's up to the Texans, and the scoreboard allows it, they want to take the air out of the football. They're not trying to give you a ton of chances to go and score points. That's just not what they want to do. And they don't care if they score one more point than you. They don't feel like, all right, I need to go put a team away. They played one-score games all season long. That's part of their DNA. Now, I think that'll help them in the postseason because they've been there. They've lived through those wars. They know what that feels like. It's just going to drive Texan fans crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, this is eye-opening for me because, like, obviously I've seen this play out, and, like, I guess in some way in my mind I've understood it to be how the team operates. But to think that basically, so let's assume that the playoff picture remains the same. The Texans go into Pittsburgh. CJ has a good first couple drives. Somewhere late in the second quarter, CJ throws the ball. It's tipped in the air and picked off by the Steelers in pretty good field position. It leads to a field goal. The rest of the game, CJ Stroud's just handing the ball to Woody Marks and Nick Chubb and Jawar Jordan and throwing jailbreak screens to Nico Collins and hoping to get something. I mean, it doesn't make me despair because the defense is good. It's legitimate. And like I said, the offense has improved enough that I feel like even in a conservative mode, they can hold the ball. But it's just not my favorite strategy. I mean, and this is coming from a perspective of like, I've said many times before, like I grew up in a household that was full of Cowboys fans, and the amount, like I became very familiar with this concept of playing not to lose, which is basically what it is, depending on how much you trust the defense. I don't think it's legitimately that for the Texans because the defense is so good. You're not really playing not to lose. You're just putting a lot of trust in your defense. But watching the Cowboys trot Tony Romo out there, go up by such and such an amount of points, however, like 2 or 3 scores, and then take their foot off the gas and just play not to lose and play in that conservative mentality of like, well, we just don't want to make a mistake that could lose us the game. And then watching them time and time again slowly lose games doing that, it's just a bit disconcerting from that perspective, because as a believer that history tends to repeat itself, that those Cowboys teams also had really good defenses. You could argue that a lot of those coaches were like, you know, oh, we're just going to lean on this defense. Tony Romo is a good quarterback, but like we've got a solid defense that can hold. And they just didn't realize they were putting their defense out by going 3 and out with their offense several times and putting the defense in a bad position. So I'm not saying those were elite level defenses, but they were not bad. Those were teams that were overall really good and felt like they could turn to their defense in that moment. Not to the same, like I said, it's not a direct comparison because the Texans feel like they can turn to their defense in a way that is like generational. This is something that not very many teams get to see from their defense. It's like the next level of defense. They're plugging in, you know, Kayvon Wallace at safety and producing what is ultimately one of, if not the best defense of the 2000s. I can think of a couple that rival or potentially are better, namely like the 2000 Ravens to me is like the gold standard of you know, Y2K defenses. But yeah, I know you're discontent with the way that I made that comparison. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, their defenses weren't good, and you know, as somebody who was not a Cowboys fan, but you can't live in the state of Texas and not know a handful, if not a garbage pail of Cowboys fans, you know, and listen to them talk about their Cowboys. Like Tony Romo would go and throw for 400 yards and 3 scores, and he would not make the play at the end of the game to win the game. And it's like, look at the man's stat line. Like, if you just took that out of context, he did everything you would ask a quarterback to do. But because the defense was so abysmal and they would give it up all the time, Tony Romo would be asked to go out there and make one more drive, one more play, and he would come up short. And I think that kind of defined his career. He was really a good quarterback that just could never get over the hump because he was always behind the 8 ball. He was never playing like with the lead late in the 4th quarter. He was always trying to come back. So for me,
you could look at 2023, sorry to interrupt, but you look at the 2023 Texans, that's like early development stages of the defense. The Texans really relied on explosive plays from Stroud that, can you give us one more? Can you give us one more? And comparing that to now, I understand why people yearn for it. It's the same reason why the Monday Night Football game this past week, you know, Bears 49ers was like magic on TV because people want to see scoring. They don't want to see a team that's sound in its defense to the point where it can rely on it to just shut down a game without having to run up the score. So in 2023, we're watching the Texans play against, you know, the Buccaneers and come back from down, you know, such and such an amount of points. CJ Stroud put up the most, you know, passing yards a rookie's ever put up and scoring a last second touchdown. Stroud doesn't have to do that now. Stroud doesn't, we're not, just like you said with Romo, you know, he fails in the last moment. We're not putting CJ in a position to fail in the last moment because this defense is just that good. So sorry to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay. I'm glad you brought up the Monday night game because if I told you had the choice between being either one of those teams where your offense could light it up and go score as many times as they want, but your defense was an absolute sieve and they're just going to get whatever they want, or you get an offense that really only puts just enough up there, but your defense is locked down, I'm interested as to where the fans lean. Like, what would you rather have? Because to me, I think D'Amico's saying, without saying it, is like, look, we could be that team, but I don't want to do that to my defense because I don't think the Niners defense is terrible. I don't think the Bears defense is terrible. They didn't stop anybody. Like, I can't imagine being one of the podcasters or fans of that fan base watching their defense just get absolutely marched on left and right. I think it was 35-35 before somebody finally scored something other than a touchdown the other way. Like, that stuff's got to be nerve-wracking because you're just literally, you don't expect them to stop anybody.
Look at the 49ers, right? They ended up winning the game, right? It's a Bears team that it's not too surprising. If there's ever a high-seeded team in one of the conferences that feels fraudulent, I'm watching the Bears and I'm wondering, like, they look really good, but they kind of feel like the Commanders last year, where it's like, okay, you got to win it now. Like, I don't know if you're going to get the same chance next year.
People say that about the Texans.
That people are saying that about the Texans. People are looking back at that Dan Campbell quote from the Lions after losing the NFC Championship to the 49ers. But if you look at the 49ers, we can look at the way they played the Texans. And I think it's very clear that people, if you're given the choice, I'd rather have what the Texans have right now than what the 49ers have. I agree. It was Mac Jones, but still, the Texans defense locked down the 49ers offense. And then the 49ers pass rush is non-existent. So an offense that, for all intents and purposes, sucked at that point. That was very early. Like, they had developed somewhat, but that was a game where CJ and the offense looked really good, in spite of the fact that they had not really looked good all season because the 49ers couldn't put any pressure on him. And when CJ Stroud is unpressured, he's next level. He's a really skilled quarterback. I think it's a real shame that the way that this season has unfolded has further enforced in a lot of people's minds that CJ Stroud is not an elite quarterback, or at least close to competing at that level, because of the way that the offense is still developing. But whether you blame it on scheme, offensive line skill level, that has all been developing throughout the season. And I think that we're seeing the culmination of it. I feel really good going into the playoffs because of the way it's developed. I think that when the moment comes for it to show that development, that it'll be ready to do it. But like, to go back to the 49ers, you're looking at a team which, obviously, like I said, against the Texans, it was Mac Jones. But even with Brock Purdy, if you've got a defense that can get a rush in on most quarterbacks, like, Justin Herbert's the poster child. Because, what are there's a joke they make about Herbert, the if man. And like, you saw it right out. If the Texans pass rush wasn't so violent and good, then Justin Herbert would have, thrown for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's like, okay, cool. That's not what happened. The Texans shut him down because, and he made some impressive plays in spite of it. But like, that's what I would rather see, as a team that defensively can just lock down another team and then gets enough from the offense. And to be fair, we've gotten some plays this season from the Texans offense that are really impressive and exciting. It's just, what really sucks is, like, the Raiders game, the offense was just, it was there against a team that they really should have been able to take advantage of. That is a team in the Raiders that defensively has performed really well against really good offenses. So it's not entirely unsurprising, but you see a team like the Raiders come up on the schedule and you expect to do, certain things to them that didn't happen. But I mean, is that reason to hate the whole season? No, the Texans have come back from 0-3 to 11-5. They have objectively the best defense in the entire NFL. And that is why, whether you like it or not, like, and there's some people that look at what happened on the Monday Night Football and they go, that is exciting football. That's a good football game. And you'll see the counter argument. A lot of analysts, a lot of content creators that are like, so you're saying that absolutely no defense is a good football game? And in some people's eyes, that's good football. To me, like, I look back at, like, the Ice Bowl, Cowboys, Packers. I look back at, like, I'm one of those guys. A lot of those guys that like high scoring games don't like snow football. I like snow football. As much as I don't think the Texans do well in it, I like to see two teams go to Lambeau with, snow pouring down. And I like to see who can play that, whose defense can stand up. That's, to me, is a good football game. And it's a shame that in this day and age where passing has become so such an important part of the game and such that we've kind of lost that, I feel like.
So let me ask you this, because I'm genuinely interested, because I feel like there's a sect of Texans fans that probably feel this way. Would you have been more pleased had the Chargers Texans game looked like the Niners Bears game in which they won, but they had to march down the field and get a touchdown with like 2 minutes left, and the score is, you know, inflated crazy? Like would that have like excited fans, you know, of the Texans?
Assuming the Texans won?
Always assuming the Texans won, because if they lose that game, like I guarantee you, there's nobody that's going, wow, did you see that offense? But we lost. Nobody's doing that. You know what I mean? Now everybody's just
No, to be fair, I mean, there's two sides to that coin. So we'll go with the assumption you've given me. I think that most Texans fans would prefer the result from Monday Night Football because, like I said, most fans in the modern NFL see high scoring as good football. That being said, looking at it solely from what we want to see from the Texans that could indicate that they can make a run, seeing the offense produce at that level against a Bears defense that has been solid, not like best defense in the NFL kind of stuff, but they've got a solid secondary. CJ would have to be dotting them up to do what Purdy did to them.
I'm talking about against the Chargers.
Oh, but yeah, okay. So then against the Chargers, still the Chargers defense. One of the reasons that game was close is that the Chargers defense is really good. Doing that against a playoff defense would be a huge positive. And the thing is that I can look at a poor defensive performance against that Chargers team, and I can go, yeah, that's not going to happen again. Like D'Amico's going to right the ship. He's going to get that right. He has proven time and again. Every other game this season has been in losses has been one score. And they've had several other one-score games, but every single loss the Texans have had this season has been a one-score game. Now, I would say of those that the Seahawks game was probably the least, it felt the least like a one-score game, but all of them have been. The Texans defense, I'd say, looked the worst in the Seahawks game. That's why the Seahawks are probably my primary concern coming out of the NFC. But that's looking at it from that perspective. The positive takeaway is that you can see an offense that functions at a high level against a good defense, which means you have more confidence going into the playoffs that CJ Stroud can run the Texans offense in a way that will complement the defense and give them what they need to win a Super Bowl. On the other side, seeing what we saw this past Sunday just confirms the Texans defense is still an elite, which means that they will hold teams to what they held them to. And we saw 5 minutes of really good football from CJ Stroud, which still confirms the same thing. So I think at the end of the day, the right answer is to say, yeah, what we saw on Saturday was what we needed to see. The defense is still elite. They shut down a playoff team, and CJ Stroud looked really good until adjustments were made, which means that a developing offense that has shown that it has gotten a lot better over time still needs to get better. What else is new? Whereas if I'm looking at the result that was on Monday Night Football in this same game, I'm stoked that we got a lot of offense, and it makes me feel a little better about the offense. But while I do have confidence in the defense, it does raise a question that's never been raised this season because, like I said, so far this season, the Texans have not lost by multiple scores because the defense is that good. So if the defense gives up that many points, it would be the first time they've done it all season. The only team that scored 30 or close to 30 points on the Texans this season has been the Jaguars at 29. It would raise a lot of questions on the defense, which has happened this season. There's been games where you look at the way the defense played and you go, okay, well, we have to ask a couple questions because that wasn't up to standard, but nothing has ever been like to that level. So I know you probably expected me to say that Monday Night Football would be the more exciting and better game, and I think a lot of Texans fans would see it that way, but I think that what we got was what we needed. What about you? What would you think? What would you see?
Well, see, so here's the thing. Like, you can't have both sides of the coin. So when I say you get that kind of production, you can't go, well, that would just be a bad week for our defense. No, your defense would be that bad throughout the season. Like both of those teams have given up chunks of points. So what I'm getting at is like, what kind of what would you want your team comprised of? I think the general concession is that everybody wants the defense to give up nothing and the offense to go score 40 points, which of course there are 32 other fan bases that feel the exact same way. That's not possible. I mean, I guess it could be, but it's very rare. And to look for that now seeing what we've seen from this team seems dumb. So what I'm getting at is, yeah, those guys played a shootout and San Fran won. Their fans are going to sleep a little bit better. There's still going to be tons of questions about their defense and can they stop anyone? And if the playoffs come, if the Bears are maybe not that good, another team with a better offense could come in here and put 50 on us and beat us. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep at night because my defense isn't good.
What's the most interesting about this entire discussion?
What's that?
Is that all season long, you have been very firmly in a win is a win. And
I still am.
We talk about how the win happened, but it's fun to see you analyze the hypotheticals and what comes from how the result happens, with how a win is a win you have been all season. It's not a bad thing, but
it's not.
I think it's a
changing,
very valid discussion.
It's not changing my perspective at all.
You would still be a win is a win, but then we can talk about how that affects, the outcome affects viewpoint of how the team is supposed to perform.
Yeah, and I think that's a horrible way to look at it because you're not taking account of what you have. You're asking for something else. We've talked about the Raiders game. So many people were upset that the Raiders game was the Raiders game. The offense sucked. The defense sucked. They won, but I hate it. And it's like those are games that are going to happen in a season to every team. There's teams that you have no business being in games with. The Cleveland Browns went and beat the Steelers in a game they had to have to win the division with their fourth quarterback, their third tight end, their third running back. Like they had a bunch of guys you never heard of and took a game from the Steelers who, have a Super Bowl caliber coach and a Super Bowl caliber quarterback and guys on the team.
Are we still saying Super Bowl caliber coach about the Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin?
You have to. He's got one.
He's got one, but
they that. It does not matter who
Jimmy
it is.
Johnson was coaching today. Would you say that he's a Super Bowl caliber head coach?
You have to because he's done it. You can't take it away from him.
You can't take it away from him, but I mean, would you say Pete Carroll is a Super Bowl caliber head coach?
You have to do that. He's won one. Now the team
is a Super Bowl caliber head coach with what he did with UNC this season.
I'm not saying the team is Super Bowl caliber. I'm saying the coaches. The team is a different story. You have to have 53 to be able to do all that. But when you look at positions, if you're playing Madden, like so many people like to do, especially when they try to go trade and acquire guys like Trayvon Diggs, come on down, come to Houston. Where are you going to play him? You're not going to play him.
Let's take a look at that. What are your thoughts on Trayvon Diggs, and if the Texans should even look at it?
Absolutely not. It's a horrible idea. There's nowhere you're going to play him. And everybody's like, well, he'd be free and you can just bring him in and he's a really good player. It's like, yes, but the fit matters. Like it does. Look at CJ Gardner-Johnson. They brought him in like this guy's going to be great. Fit was awful. He didn't want to play the ball. They wanted to play. He's in Chicago playing well. Not a bad player, but they learned their
culture.
Yeah, and I think they learned their lesson there. What's up, Brandon? Good to see you. I think that, everybody just can't do that. There are people on social media, that's all they do. And it doesn't matter the sport. Basketball, football, baseball, player X is out there. Dana Brown, please. Nick, do it, please. And it's like, no, man, no. That doesn't work. When Micah Parsons was on the trade block, people were talking about trading Danielle Hunter for him. And it's just like, no, man, no. Leave that stuff alone. It's stupid. It's dumb.
On the bright side, if Micah Parsons was on the team, maybe he would come on our live stream since he's so into podcasting.
That would be really cool. The funny thing about the Trayvon Diggs thing is like, you should definitely check on your Cowboys fans because they paid Trayvon Diggs and chose to trade Micah Parsons.
Was it 5 years, $93 million?
And now they have neither. Now there's no guaranteed money there, but still they signed him. When Micah wanted a new deal. The
Cowboys released him, I think, says all you need to hear.
Oh,
and then the reports that his agent told all the big name media guys like, oh, he's looking to get onto a playoff contender. It's like, yeah, sure. I mean, a desperation move. Like, let me tell you this. Knock on wood here. If the Texans were to suffer some significant injury to their secondary that opened up a spot for him, I think it would be GM malpractice to not bring him in and talk to him. But I think that at the end of the day, you have to have D'Amico in that room. and you have to turn to Miko and say, hey, is this a guy who can get it? And if he's not a guy who can get it, if he's not swarm mentality, then you plug and play, Elijah Huzzy, and you get what you get. I mean, you plug and play Tremont Smith, and you get what you get, which has worked so far. I mean, I Texans fans are so quick to go big name, must have. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's been some injury concerns with Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley. Like, that doesn't mean that we suddenly need him on the team. Let's not speak that into existence, James. By the way, guys, if you're in the chat and you have something you want to hear us talk about, we're live for reasons to talk. If you guys have something you want to say, I'll put it on the screen, unless it's incredibly inappropriate.
Incredibly.
We'll talk about. We might, if it's incredibly inappropriate, we might still talk about it, but it might not see the screen. Not gonna lie. But yeah, so I mean, I think we're in agreement on that. I think that it never really made any sense. I mean, like I said, due diligence. If I heard the Texans talked to him, even right now in their current state, I would understand it. And that's I tweeted as much. I was like, there's been some injuries and some injury concerns. Guys playing through injuries where you might want to have that depth, but if you bring him into the room and he doesn't fit, you remove him from the room so that he doesn't cause a ruckus.
I'm trying to remember the wide receiver they did that with last year. He was a Ravens wide receiver, and they brought him in for
Deontay
depth.
Johnson.
Yes, they brought him in for depth and wanted no part of it. And I feel like you can't bring a guy that thinks he's an alpha in and go, hey, you got to get in where you fit in. You know what I mean? They want to be treated a certain way. Trayvon Diggs screams that to me. I heard the story of why, things got sideways because he wanted to stay in Washington with his family and they didn't want to let him do that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't believe that the Cowboys organization does the right thing by their players either. So, maybe Trayvon isn't a bad guy. I don't know.
We've got a reformed Cowboy on the team in Dalton Schultz. I mean, the way he talked about his experience there didn't exactly make me think that he loved his time there. And that's the thing, is that it's kind of become more of a zoo where you can go in and look at the players closely and reminisce on, what happened back when DVDs didn't exist, and 4K TVs were not being produced, or 1080p TVs for that matter. The TVs were all big and not flat. So a lot of change has happened since the Cowboys did anything relevant. So it's tough to say. I don't know.
19 something. You got to start the year with a 19 in order to find relevant Cowboy stuff.
That's been an interesting thing to do, because obviously I was born in the 90s, and like for the longest time I was like, yeah, I'm like a young person, and now they're like, oh, when were you born? I'm like, oh, 19. They're like, 19, like a grandpa. I'm like, okay, guys, I know I'm not, but okay, whatever. So let's see. Oh, we got some more activity in the chat. Brandon Halam, OG Texans chat legend, says, I realized we can't draft Jeremiah Love. Of course we can, but we can't because our halfback room would be Love, Woody. I would love to see the Love Woody 1-2 punch on the field. No Diddy.
I think y'all got it backwards, because Woody would be the top dog, so it'd be Woody Love.
Are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, I would love to see it, because I think Woody Love could work better in that joke, but I think you draft a guy in the first round, he's got to be the primary in the 1-2 punch. I think that, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but I mean, I think there is a need to do something at running back. To be fair, against the Chargers, we did get a good amount of production out of Woody Marks and Jawar Jordan. If that was to continue, we could see the Texans potentially, continue to down that road with them. Maybe not address it, but I have trouble seeing a scenario outside of that, outside of like the sudden realization that those two are it, where the Texans do nothing at running back. And I'll lace this into your question, Brent, which is that. What does the ideal offseason look like? New OC, what upgrades are you looking to make? I think the upgrades feature running back and an interior offensive lineman. And that's to say, I like what Woody Marks has done. I think Jawar Jordan has been a revelation. I think that Nick Chubb probably doesn't come back next year. So you're probably looking to replace Nick Chubb. You're probably not anticipating Joe Mixon being back. I'm going to be 100% honest. I mean, if he is great, but I wouldn't let that affect how you address the room. And then as far as OC goes, I mean, here's what I'll say. I'll compare it to the Detroit Lions situation. Dan Campbell's a great head coach, a lot better of a head coach than Nick Caley is an offensive coordinator at the moment. So, and maybe not an entirely valid conversation. Ben Johnson is a really great offensive mind and has done wonders with the Bears. I'm not saying that the Lions should have considered moving on from Dan Campbell for Ben Johnson, because Dan Campbell's a great head coach. That being said, Nick Caley is just an okay offensive coordinator, and I think he has the potential to be great. But there's a few names that have come up. Mike McDaniel, Kevin Stefanski are two head coaches that are expected to be moved on from, guys that you could reasonably bring in as an offensive coordinator and not expect them to get a lot of head coach interest in the near future. If you see that opportunity arise, you'd have, just like with Trayvon Diggs, right? I think you have to consider it, because if you think if you think the offense is what's holding you back, and you think that scheme continues to be a part of that, which I think it is, because the scheme is still getting adjusted, you have to make the decision between, is getting an entirely new scheme and a third different offensive coordinator for CJ Stroud worth it, or do you want to let Nick Caley continue to develop this team? And that would affect everything. Everything I've just said about what the ideal offseason would look like is affected by whether or not the Texans even entertain that. And I going off of history, not a lot of teams would fire a young, promising offensive coordinator. As much as some people may not agree with that assessment of Nick Caley, there's not a lot of teams that would fire a young, promising offensive coordinator to bring in a more seasoned and experienced guy who's coming off of not doing very well as a head coach. And to be fair, Kevin Stefanski has had to, pawn off play calling duties several times in his time with the Browns. Mike McDaniel, I think, is an exciting prospect somewhere on the Texans coaching staff, but I'm not sure that I'd want to drop, Nick Caley. I think that Nick Caley's job is safe. Whether you say that's because of the defense or because you want to see more from him is neither here nor there. There are some intriguing names that could become available, but I'm just not sure that the Texans are in a place where that's something they want to do. And Tom, do you want to give your answer? I'm going to look. I need to look at what Brent's saying here. 1 second.
I don't know where you hope to gain any sense of continuity if you go to a third offensive coordinator. Like I feel like the whole Texans brass is really tied to Nick Caley, whether you like it or not. And it's a lot to do with CJ Stroud, right? Like, you see growing pains in this offense. Everybody does. And what do you think is going to happen if you bring a third offensive coordinator? The dudes don't just show up and everything works. It never does. You have to like get an idea of what your players are and what they can do, what they can't do. Your system sometimes has to be adjusted, for quarterbacks, for wide receivers, for whatever. And it's like you're starting over again. And look, I didn't love the hire because I thought that this was going to take some time. I thought they should have went with a seasoned offensive coordinator last time because the coordinator before that was a young guy and it didn't work out. And now you had to start over with another young guy. But if you go to a third offensive coordinator, you run the risk of absolutely stunting CJ's growth, because at some point he's going to be very like, is it me? Like, am I the problem?
Well, that's the question you have to ask. Yeah, I agree with that.
Because we're not producing. And every week, ESPN, Fox, CBS, you name the guy. Well, if the Texans offense would just get their stuff together, the Texans would be a runaway Super Bowl favorite. They hear this stuff. So they have to figure out a way to make what they have work. Now, to answer Brent's question, what I think is the ideal offseason, the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line. You know what I mean? Interior defensive line, interior offensive line, and just go get the best you can. If that means you trade picks to get back up, to get the best one, because really, when CJ's had time to throw the football, he's looked good. Like even when he hasn't had a lot of time, he's looked good. And I think some of the mistakes he makes a lot of the time is because of the internal clock, because he was sped up last year, because he was sped up kind of start this year. He took a lot of punishment, wasn't trying to take a lot of punishment. If you think that doesn't mess with your head, you got to go out and play some sports, because the minute doubt creeps in at all, you start to doubt everything all the time. Now, CJ's talked about it. He'll be better. He's going to figure it out. I believe him. And if you believe him, you have to believe that the offensive coordinator can help him get there. Otherwise, you start all over. And I just think that adds a level of doubt. It adds a level of concern that, okay, I'm the same dude, and I've got 3 offensive coordinators. Like, at some point, somebody's going to go, you're the problem.
People are already doing that. That's the thing. Whether it is his problem or not, one thing that's not going to help CJ is bringing in another offensive coordinator and then basically begging the question of, is it the offensive coordinator? Because CJ has been the quarterback this whole time. It's the same thing that happens when a GM has been there for a long time. The fact that Nick Caserio got to be the GM for D'Amico Ryans is a miracle. It was literally his 3rd head coaching hire, and you have to ask the question of, is Nick Caserio to blame for why this team is not good? Now, we've seen his draft history, and while I'm kind of softening on the stance of how he drafts offensive linemen, we'll let that play out a little longer. But everywhere else, he has stacked this Texans team with some very useful talent. So, and I think looking back at Brent's comment, outside of winning the Super Bowl, I don't even think that's really like to say that the Texans would have to win a Super Bowl to not move on from the offensive coordinator is to misunderstand like what is needed and like how the Texans should view that situation. I view it very much the same as Bobby Slowick. That was one where Bobby Slowick did so good in his first season as the Texans offensive coordinator that a lot of people were worried he might take a head coaching job in that offseason, and then he stayed. And I stand by, even knowing what I know now, that it was a good thing that Bobby Slowick stayed. It gave CJ consistency. It was the right move at the time. And so that being said, we're coming close to the end of the first year of a more tumultuous tenure from Nick Cagley, and the answer is still the same. He needs a second season. And I don't think he's done anything so egregious that the Texans would even have reason to look into letting him go. And I mean, I do agree. Like, if Mike McDaniel or Kevin, or I guess I should say when Mike McDaniel and Kevin Stefanski become available, if the Texans think that that's what fixes them, then sure, look into it. But it would be a questionable move to put in the 3rd offensive coordinator after, it definitely, my first question, if they move on from Nick Cagley, is CJ Stroud the problem? That is, and it has to be the first question. He is the common denominator in all of these offenses. So
you put a big, huge bullseye on his chest if you do that, because that's the question. Okay, they've changed. All right, it's not fixing it. It didn't. They went young, now they went old. It's not fixing it. So there's probably more risk with moving from Nick Cagley to another guy than reward for me. To answer the other part of your question, I don't see why they touch running back. Like, what don't we like about the idea of Jawar Jordan and Woody Marks that you need a 3rd young running back? If they go get somebody older, sure. But I mean, that's what Dare is, right? And everybody hates it, but that is what he is. British Books is also there in special teams. So like, I think they're probably in a situation where you can invest in the lines. You can invest maybe at safety if you wanted, and leave the running back room alone.
I'm trying to think, Sean, let me go through the AFC playoff picture. The Patriots have Trayvon Henderson. They just drafted him very early. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Ramondre Stevenson was kind of in there for a little bit before things went south.
He's still in there.
Look at the Broncos have a 1-2 punch that doesn't really feature a very clear, highly drafted, highly touted running back. They do have a guy who's clearly better between the two, but they don't have like that guy. I would look to like CMC, Saquon Barkley as like that guy trope of running backs. Jacksonville has Travis Etienne or Trevor Etienne. Well, I can't even remember. I'm losing my mind right now. And then the 4th seed, which for now is the Steelers, they don't really have like they have Gainwell, and like their running back room is a mess.
Warren is their guy. Come on now.
And Jalen Warren, yeah. Which is not like to say, I wouldn't say Jalen Warren is like that guy. He's just the better of the two. We are obviously in the position that we're in. We look at the Bills, they've got James Cook. We look at the Chargers, they've got Omarion Hampton. I think that if I'm looking at running back situations in the AFC alone, I like the idea of going after a running back higher this season. I also wouldn't mind, drafting highly. So here's my thing, right? Let's say the Texans are put in a position where Jeremiah Love is available in the first round. The other needs that we've described are these things that need to be drafted in the first round. These are things that will be drafted in the first round by other more desperate teams, but we have a GM who doesn't believe in need.
And
So
you hate that.
So understanding who he is, if Jeremiah Love is available and he views the running back room the same way that we view it, or at least the way that I view it, which is that Woody Marks is great. Jawar Jordan, great. And Nick Chubb, we can move on from him, but I mean, there is a need for that guy. I think that teams that have that guy tend to do better. And I think that if you're choosing between reaching on a guard in the first round, I think it would be less of a reach to go for interior defensive line in the first round. But I think that with the Texans draft capital, they're drafting very early in the second round. So any player that they're
Thanks,
looking
Washington.
so any player they're looking at one of those two positions in the first round will likely be there in the second round based on where we think the Texans should be drafting, which is late 20s. So we're looking at waiting 10 spots, maybe coupling some draft capital, which Nick Caserio has been known to do, to move up from that Washington pick a couple spots into the late second to take another guy. So the way I see it, if Jeremiah, and I don't think Jeremiah Love falls that far, is my thing. But I think that if there is that elite running back prospect there, and I think if they probably should be viewing it this way, in my opinion, then I would wait on a guard. Your best guard that you've drafted, if we're keeping it a buck, you drafted in the 6th round. So I'm not necessarily chomping at the bit to see Nick Caserio spend a first round pick on a guard if I'm keeping it 100. So I think that I'd rather take a interior defensive lineman with that pick or the best offensive weapon available. Because I think the run game both of those things are the problem, but I think that you can fix the value on offensive linemen is much better later in the draft. If you can do your research and scout it, which the Texans have shown, as much as I talk down on Caserio's ability to draft offensive linemen, he has done better at doing it later in the draft. So with that in mind, why would you want to just unload a first round pick on whatever guard is considered the best lineman available late in the draft? I mean, that's just so I know you probably don't agree that running back is a need. And to be fair, I'd feel comfortable going into next season with a later round draft pick and kind of trying to round out the room with different capabilities, maybe get a heavier, more of a Lendale White type, someone who can take the handoff on 4th and 1 and just bulldoze in there, which, to be fair, some people think British Brooks is. I don't think they've given him that role, but he is more of that built back. There's not a wrong answer there. I don't think this is a team that is built to contend. And I think that you have to look at using your top draft capital on the offense because of it being the primary need. And I agree with Brent. Nick is really good in the 2nd and 3rd round unless it's an offensive lineman. So in that case, I'd rather Nick, like Brent said, I'd rather Nick go into free agency and pick up a veteran interior offensive lineman if that's the choice. Is the choices between 1st round pick offensive lineman or getting a free agent, a known commodity, in my opinion. There was one other thing Brent said that I wanted to talk about.
Well, let me get back to that.
You get yours,
because
I'll sit
because it's so interesting the angles that you and Brent took, and I'm not dogging it. However, I think Jeremiah Love is a 100% Nick Caserio move because it's he's not drafting for need. Everybody and their mother would say right now that if at least for me, if you had the number one need on Mel Kiper's big board, it's interior offensive line. It's not running back. It's not tight end. It's not deep. It's not interior defensive line. It's interior
But
offensive
drafting
line.
running back is not drafting for need. It's actually very contrary to Nick Caserio.
No, because
it is in line with him in terms of taking a lesser need, but it is a need.
It's not a need. If you
it's the same level of need that it was last season. I mean, it was a need going into last year's draft.
If you think that the guys that they have right now are not good, then it's a need. If you like the guys that they have right now, it's not a need. So you're talking about...
I can like the guys they have right now and view it as a need because, like I said, I think that Woody Marks is a solid running back, but I think... And this is the same way that I've talked about the interior offensive line in terms of how they've shuffled it and how, putting in a Jarrett Patterson over a Juice Scruggs is a significant improvement. Putting in Titus Howard over Juice Scruggs is a significant improvement. So while Juice Scruggs is like, okay, he can stand in there and do it. And I think Woody Marks is a better running back than Juice Scruggs as a guard. But I think that if you can get a Jeremiah Love and put him in there, it is an improvement. It's not enough that you won't see Woody Marks anymore. I think Woody Marks still is exactly what the Texans need, a third down back. I think it limits Dario Gumbawale's role, which we should be aiming to do. But I do think it is a need to get a guy who's reliable to overcome. You want to attack the issue from both sides. The issue at the Texans run game, while it is on the offensive line, is also on the running backs. It's a two-way street. Any one of those things can fix it. You can either draft Jeremiah Love and hope that he can work with what he's got in blocking and get through it, or you can draft offensive linemen and hope that you've improved the run blocking enough that Woody Marks will look better than he has, which is not bad. He's not looked bad. He's just been okay. He's been good.
I see you struggling with trying to correctly ID what Woody is because you don't want to sound like you're dogging him. But at the same time, you don't want to sound like you're propping him up either. And you can't live in both worlds.
I'm not propping him up. I think that
he's either not good enough or he is good enough. And I don't think you can.
Chris Johnson needs his Lendell White. That's just part of the deal.
But he has that in Jawar Jordan.
But you do need Chris Johnson. You need the primary back, the guy who you hand the ball to. You can hand it to him all 3 downs if you want. I mean,
Woody is a rookie, and I think you can hand it to him all 3 downs. The third down back is a receiving guy more than he is a running guy. So the argument that he can't be all 3 downs doesn't make any sense because he's a really good receiver.
I'm not saying he can't be all 3 downs. What I'm saying is
you're saying
Woody
to go
Marks
draft one.
Good, but we can add a running back that is great with elite potential. As if looking back at last year's draft, right? If the Texans suddenly had an extra first-round pick, and they were in a position where they could take Trayvon Henderson, Omarion Hampton, would you pass on them and take someone else? Hindsight being 2020, and still take Woody Marks? I would still take Woody Marks either way, but would you want to have more than just the one running back? It's tough to say. And the other part of that hypothetical that's tough to say is that no one knew during that draft that Joe Mixon wasn't going to play.
No.
So Woody Marks was viewed as added for the role that I think he will fulfill when the Texans add a running back this offseason to be the guy.
Yeah, but you can't.
Is to be the 1-2 punch. He's meant to be one of 2 running backs. And right now he is the primary with Jawar Jordan or whoever's healthy behind him. I think he should be the guy behind. And it's not a bad thing. I think he could still be really good in that role. I think he's great. I think the fact that he's showing the way he has is great for what role I foresee him having in this offense.
You're saying that the role you foresee him having in the offense is a demotion, which is kind of for me, it's kind of tough because I don't think you have to do that. If the guy is good, then just let him be good. I get where you're saying.
Would you say that David Johnson is not a good running back because he is the number 2 punch to Jahmyr Gibbs? I mean, that's what
David
I'm talking
Montgomery.
about here. I'm talking about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Johnson. That is,
but we don't know what Woody is. This is his
we
rookie
know that Woody is probably about as good as David Johnson, who is probably RB1 on a lot of teams in this league.
I won't say that. I'm not ready to say this is Woody is a finished product. The best he'll ever be is a 2. And he'll be a third down back. I'm not willing to say that. If you are, that's cool. And if you feel like, all right, they clearly need to address that, well, then now you've got Jawar Jordan that you need to get rid of. because he's not going to be on the team.
Well, no, he would be the RB3, which is, I mean, he's
that's a special teams guy.
Let me give you a name. Let me look back at Texans history and give you a name.
This is going to be horrible.
So the first name I'm going to give you is Arian Foster. Undrafted, comes in, is that guy.
Okay.
Arian Foster left, no doubt. There was never a moment in my mind where I was like, the Texans need a running back to be the guy because Arian Foster's the guy. You know what they needed? They needed the next man up. You know who they drafted? This is the name I meant to give you right away. Ben Tate.
I remember
Ben Tate was excellent. Ben Tate was always meant to be that next guy up. That was what he was drafted to do. And if the Texans could have convinced him to stay in that role, it would have been great for Arian Foster. He gave Arian Foster the rest. He was an excellent running back for that role. As soon as he left on another contract to try and do that for another team and be the guy, he wasn't. I'm not saying that that's destined to be Woody Marks' future, but I think that that's the role that I see for him is Ben Tate. Did I say David Johnson earlier? David Montgomery.
You said David Johnson like 6 times.
I didn't mean to say it. I'm scarred, okay, from that trade of DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson.
Do you know what Arian Foster did in his rookie season? Do you know his numbers for his rookie season?
They weren't like super great. He came in at the end of his rookie season.
He played 6 games with 1 start. Do you know how many yards he rushed for? Do you know how many touchdowns he had?
I want to say that was the game where he put up 2 touchdowns and like 100 and something yards.
He had 257 yards and 3 TDs in 6 games. So I'm not dogging Arian Foster. What I'm saying is that if Woody Marks came in, done more than that, and we're saying he can't be any better, could you imagine the podcasters back when Arian Foster, well, they probably need to draft a running back. You know, they got this guy. He's undrafted. He was okay, but, you know, I don't know if he can be the guy. They really could spend a first-round pick and go get insert name, and then they could have a 1-2, and then you never would have got Arian Foster. Like, do you understand that?
I see your point, because at that point, they would be entering that season with Steve Slayton coming back off of injury, who had a really good season, rushed for 1K yards, and looked like he could be the guy. The Texans, after seeing Steve Slayton do that, didn't do anything at running back, and then lucked into an undrafted Arian Foster stepping up at the end of the season and showing them some potential so that they could roll with that. Whereas once we realized that Steve Slayton was, you know, washed, and then we can move on from that thought and we can say, okay, now it's time to bring in a running back, and then we can draft Ben Tate. Whereas the Texans are doing this in reverse order. They've got Woody Marks. And the big thing for me, too, aside, like, Woody Marks has shown a lot of potential. He's also shown a lot of injury proneness, which was something that Arian Foster had. So you do want another guy in that room. And that's the thing, is I think if you bring in Jeremiah Love, if you can, which I don't even think is likely, that's just the name that I have in the first round because I haven't done a lot of research. If you bring in Jeremiah Love, and the worst case is that Woody Marks remains number 1, and you just have a really good running back that can also put up a lot of, like, I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was a season where the Texans had close to 2 1,000-yard rushers in Arian Foster and Ben Tate. That was like the best year. I think it was 2011 or 2012. And so, like, if you can get that, like, I think the primary goal should be to fix the run game, and I think you should do that at all costs. So I think smartly that you go for running back early because, you know, if Jeremiah Love slips that far, it's really good value.
So Kuiper has Love at 1 and Jadarian Price at 2, both Notre Dame running backs. So say Jadarian Price is there, right? And to be fair, I want to be very clear. I feel like drafting running back is a Caserio move. Offensive line should be the focus, but he's not going to draft for need. Maybe it's an interior defensive line that he goes to. But
I'd be willing to bet that he has interior offensive line dialed before we even get to the draft. I'm not gonna lie.
I think that you know, he's gonna say, I'm gonna go take the best player available. And if he's on the board, he's probably the best player available. Now, do you need that? No. Are people gonna go, what now? Probably. There's gonna be a full-on competition. You know, maybe it works out. It's way too early for this season for me to worry about that. I'm hoping Woody balls out in the postseason. We're not talking about Woody Marks being replaced by anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it going either way. I just personally think that it's something the Texans should address. Whether or not it's an early pick or a late pick, there needs to be another guy in that room. It can't just be Jawar Jordan and Woody Marks, in my opinion. With Nick Chubb's departure, I think that's what opens up that being a need in some way, regardless. So whether or not they use it, I mean, I think first round pick is very Nick Caserio because it's not primary need. But oh well. On the Instagram comments, we have Robbie Robinson, 2003. I know you. A lot of people usually ask to join on Instagram. I'm not live on Instagram from Instagram. I can't really add anyone on that platform, and Tom would not be able to hear that person, so it would be extra bad. So sorry that I can't add you, but I thank you for being in the chat. With that, we do need to give our score predictions. We're getting to that point. So, the Texans go into their last game. It's Indianapolis in Houston. Riley Leonard starting at quarterback. The division is still in some way on the line. And the Titans could beat the Jaguars. It's not I'm not holding my breath for it, but there is still that possibility. Those games will be happening at the same time. The Texans are bringing in the starters, aiming to win the game. What do you think? How do you think that goes down? What score prediction do you have for us, Tom?
23-13. And I think people are going to hate it. And it's going to be one of those games where the Texans it's never going to feel like it's in doubt, but it's just going to feel too close for comfort. It'll be 20-13 midway through the fourth quarter. Texans will go on a drive, kick a field goal because, everyone loves that. And they'll salt away a 23-13 win. And I don't even know what Vegas has it at, but Vegas will obviously eat up everybody's money because everybody will bet the over because the Texans have everything to play for and the Colts have nothing to play for with a rookie quarterback. Jonathan Taylor will go for 100 yards and a score. Everybody will be like, oh, we can't stop the run. And they'll win the football game. And that's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I like to use history to learn. Robbie over in the Instagram chat said it would be very Texans for the Colts to beat us. And I agree with that to some extent. I think that the Raiders game is my draw, and also understanding that this is a divisional game, I'm not going to underestimate them. I think I've given this score prediction 10 times this season. I'm just going to give it now, but I'm going to go 20-17 in favor of the Texans. I don't have a storybook ending because in my opinion, the way it goes is sort of similar to the Chargers game. The Texans will go up really quick and then just kind of the defense will hold them off just good enough to give us the win. And then that's to say it'll be very, very much like the Texans last week where the Colts will have a very short stretch of just erratic scoring that'll make it a close game. But the Texans defense will hold the Colts down and force them to not do anything for a lot of the game. Let's see. Brandon's got a comment for us.
Preach, Brandon, preach.
Lineman, anyone can run through the holes they make. I agree with that. To be a fan of an organization that's had Arian Foster at running back, and with the understanding that while they didn't have bad O-linemen throughout the time that he was there, it was the scheme set that up, and Arian Foster was beautiful running, had some beautiful running that took advantage of the scheme. What I think it really comes down to is, do you believe that Woody Marks and Jawar Jordan are fits for what the Texans want to do running? And if you don't, or if you think they're just fits for, like I said, for the roles that I believe they can fill, then you want to find a running back who fits what the Texans running scheme is doing and can take advantage of this and of the scheme. And then you got to hope that Nick Caley can scheme it in a way that makes sense. So that's my thoughts on it in general. But Tom, do you have any final thoughts? We're going on an hour and 9 minutes, so I have to bring this thing to
Make them quick.
Isn't that how it always goes? The chat is lighten up right as we're about to bring it to a close. I believe Stressens is live right now, so if you have your Texans thoughts that you want to get out, I think he went live about 30 minutes ago.
That's my final thought. Went to the watch party hosted by Stressens out at Carbach Brewing. If you get a chance to get to one of these watch parties, absolutely do it. Tons of content creators out there. Really, really good time. You get the fan environment. Stephanie Stradley, I think that's how you say her last name. She was there. She's amazing. I mean, you got to get out there. It's like being at the game without being at the game. Next time they put one of these things up, definitely be out there. I'm always going to be out there because I think it's a great time, and it's a great way to watch a road game.
No doubt, no doubt. Speaking of road and home games, my final thought is I've looked at it, and if you believe the AFC is as wide open as I do, and if you can get more expanded thoughts on it over on Bleach Report. This is the topic of my video today. The Texans can legitimately enter as the 5th seed and have 2 home games, if with as good as teams are. Understanding the Bills will play the Patriots first round. That's divisional. That could very easily go the Bills' way. The Jaguars will play the Chargers. That could be a really good one. And
it was the last time they played.
That one I think is the less likely upset. But if the Chargers upset them, the Texans will be set to host the Chargers. And then if the Bills can beat the Broncos, the Texans will be set to host the AFC Championship. So it is something to look for. Obviously, there is that chance that they get the 3rd seed, which would be even better, really, if you wanted to look at them having home field throughout the playoffs. That's also a high possibility if they can clinch 3rd seed with the Jaguars loss and beating the Colts. And to speak to your thought or to your comment on Stressens, I wish I was out there so I could go to that. But with the Super Bowl in San Francisco this year, I'd definitely be looking to potentially take that weekend off and go up to San Francisco, not even to go to the game, just to experience the Super Bowl festivities and maybe throw together something for Texans fans, some sort of meetup. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe Stressens will come out to San Francisco. We can.
If the Texans go to the Super Bowl, I might.
Oh yeah, I'll be in San Francisco. I'll be in San Francisco. That sick time, or not sick time, that PTO will be burnt.
Yeah,
easily. And yeah, sweet. Thanks for tuning in. I have been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter, and we are the Bullpen, the #1 veteran-run Texans podcast in the Milky Way. So make sure you are subscribed and keeping up with the Bullpen as we go on a deep run. Knock on wood. All right. As always, stay classy, Houston. And vamos Texans.